The ship was dying. Captain Daniel Hayes knew it the moment the alarm started screaming through every corridor of the starward horizon. The quantum drive had failed, and with it, any hope of reaching their destination. 12,000 people slept in the chambers below. Families, children, scientists and farmers and teachers, all dreaming of a new world where they could build a future. None of them knew that their future was now measured in hours, not years. Daniel stood on the bridge and watched his crew work with desperate speed. Lieutenant Morgan had her hands deep inside an engineering panel, her face covered in grease and sweat. She had been working for 16 hours straight, trying to coax life back into the dying engines. "How bad is it?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. Pulled her hands out and shook her head. "The main drive is gone, Captain. I can maybe get us auxiliary power for another 40 hours. Life support will hold for maybe 30 after that." 70 hours. That was all the time they had left. Daniel turned to his communications officer. "Any response to our distress signal?" "Nothing, sir. The nearest human outpost is 3 weeks away at standard speed. They cannot reach us in time." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. They were alone in the velar expanse, a region of space so empty that even pirates did not bother to patrol it. No one would come. No one would save them. Daniel closed his eyes and thought of the 12,000 souls sleeping below. They had trusted him to bring them safely to their new home. They had trusted humanity's promise of a better life among the stars. And now, they would all die in the cold darkness between worlds. "Keep sending the signal," he said quietly. "Until the power runs out, we keep calling for help." It was a useless gesture, and everyone knew it. But Daniel Hayes was not the kind of man who gave up. He would fight until the very end, even if the end was already written. Hours passed. The ship grew colder as they diverted power from heating to life support. The crew wrapped themselves in emergency blankets and kept working, kept hopping, kept praying to whatever gods they believed in. Then, on the 23rd hour, something impossible happened. "Captain," the communications officer jumped from his seat. "I'm picking up a ship. It just dropped out of hyperspace, bearing 047. Daniel rushed to the sensor station. "Human." "No, sir, the signature is. I don't recognize it. Checking the database now." The officer's fingers flew across the console. "It matches design patterns, but that can't be right. They never leave their home space." The Daniel had heard of them during his diplomatic briefings. A peaceful species, ancient and wise, who kept to themselves and wanted nothing to do with galactic politics. They had no military, no interest in expansion, no reason to be out here in the middle of nowhere. And yet there they were. "They're hailing us, Captain." Daniel straightened his uniform, a foolish gesture given the circumstances. "Put them through." The flickered, and Daniel saw his first. The being was tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like mother of pearl and eyes that held the depth of ancient oceans. When it spoke, the voice was soft and musical, translated by the ship's computer into words Daniel could understand. "I am Elder of the Wanderer. We detected your distress signal. Do you require assistance?" Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Yes, our engines have failed. We have 12,000 people on board and our life support is failing. Can you help us?" Elder tilted his head in a gesture that might have been curiosity. 12,000 lives. That is a heavy burden to carry through the stars. We will help you, human captain. Prepare for docking. What followed was something Daniel would remember for the rest of his life. The ship connected to the starward horizon and began transferring supplies. Food, water, oxygen, and most importantly, spare parts that Morgan could use to repair the engines. They worked alongside the human crew without complaint. They asked no questions about why humans were traveling through this region. They made no demands, signed no contracts, requested no payment. They simply helped, as if it were the most natural thing in the universe. After 18 hours of joint effort, the engines hummed back to life. Morgan wept with relief as power flowed through the ship again. The 12,000 sleepers would live. They would reach their new world. Daniel found Elder in the corridor outside the engine room. There was watching the human crew celebrate, his ancient eyes unreadable. "I don't know how to thank you," Daniel said. "You saved all of us. Everything we have, everything we are, we owe to you. What can humanity give you in return? Name your price, anything." Elder turned to face him. For a long moment, the alien simply looked at Daniel, as if measuring something deep within his soul. "There is no price," Elder said finally. "There is no debt between those who help and those who need help. We saw suffering and we ended it. That is enough. But surely there must be something." "No," this voice was gentle but firm. "Kindness requires no ledger, human captain. We do not help others to gain advantage. We help because it is right. That is the way." Daniel did not know what to say. In his experience, everyone wanted something. Every species in the galaxy operated on trade and treaties and mutual benefit. The idea of pure, unconditional kindness seemed almost impossible. "Then at least let me give you my word," Daniel said. "Humanity will remember this. We will remember what you did for us when we were helpless and alone. And if the day ever comes when your people need help, we will be there. I promise you that." Elder smiled, a strange expression on his alien face. "You are young, human captain. Your species is young. In time, you will learn that promises made in gratitude often fade with the generations. But I appreciate your sentiment." The ship departed without ceremony. No formal alliance was signed. No treaties were made. In the records of the Galactic Council, a small notation was added that had rendered assistance to a human vessel in distress. The starward horizon continued its journey. The colonists woke from their long sleep and learned how close they had come to death, and how strangers had saved them for no reason at all. Daniel Hayes lived to see the new colony flourish. He told the story of the rescue to anyone who would listen. He told his children, and they told their children. And in the archives of Earth, a file was created, a record of kindness, a debt unpaid. Humanity remembered. 347 years had passed since the starward horizon limped home with its cargo of grateful colonists. In that time, humanity had changed beyond recognition. The small, struggling species that once begged for scraps at the galactic table now commanded respect from every corner of known space. Human colonies dotted dozens of worlds. Human ships patrolled the trade lanes. Human ambassadors sat in the highest councils of galactic government. Admiral Price stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Resolute, and watched a fleet exercise unfold before him. 200 warships moved in perfect formation, their weapons systems cycling through combat drills. This was just the third fleet, one of 12 such forces under human command. They had come so far, and yet knew they had never forgotten where they came from. On Earth, in a building that most people walked past without a second glance, there existed an institution that baffled every alien diplomat who learned of its existence. The Office of Historical Debts occupied 3 floors of a gray government building, staffed by archivists and analysts who spent their days reading very old files. Director Murray was a quiet man with gray hair and patient eyes. He had worked in the office for 30 years, and his father had worked there before him. The job required a certain type of person, someone who understood that memory was power, someone who believed that the past was never truly past. Sat at his desk and opened a file that was older than most nations. The Rescue, it was called. Case number 1, the very first entry in the office's database. He read the words of Captain Daniel Hayes, recorded 3 centuries ago. He read the description of Elder, the alien who had refused payment and spoken of kindness without ledgers. He read the promise Daniel had made, the promise that humanity would remember. And humanity had remembered. The Office of Historical Debts existed precisely for this purpose. Every kindness shown to humanity was recorded. Every wrong done to humanity was recorded. Every treaty honored and every treaty broken. Every favor given and every favor owed. Other species found this obsessive record-keeping disturbing. During diplomatic meetings, alien ambassadors would sometimes ask about the office, and human diplomats would explain its purpose with straight faces. "We remember everything," they would say. "We always pay our debts, one way or another." Most aliens thought this was a figure of speech. They did not understand that humanity meant it literally. Flagged the file for updated monitoring and sent it to Counselor Lisa, humanity's representative to the Galactic Council. It was something he did once a year, just to make sure the debt was not forgotten. Lisa received the file on her tablet while sitting in her office on the council station. She was a sharp woman with silver hair and a reputation for saying exactly what she meant. The other counselors respected her, and some of them feared her. She read through the file and smiled. 347 years, and humanity still remembered a rescue in the middle of nowhere. Some would call it sentimental. Lisa called it civilized. Then her smile faded as she opened the next file in her queue. Intelligence reports from the border regions. The Dominion was on the move again. They were everything they were not. Aggressive, expansionist, and ruthless, they had conquered a dozen species over the past millennium. Their empire stretched across an entire galactic arm, and they were always hungry for more. Lisa read the report carefully. Scout ships had been detected near space. Diplomats had been making inquiries about resources. Generals had been studying defenses, which was a short study indeed, because they had no defenses at all. The pattern was clear. They were preparing to add another world to their collection. Lisa leaned back in her chair and thought about what she had just read. They were not members of the Galactic Council. They had no defensive treaties with any major power. By every rule of galactic politics, what happened to them was their own concern. But Lisa did not operate purely by the rules of galactic politics. She operated by human rules, and human rules said that debts must be paid. She called Admiral Price. "Admiral," she said when his face appeared on her screen, "I need you to start thinking about something." Raised an eyebrow, "Counselor." "Do you know who they are?" "Ancient species, peaceful, keep to themselves. Why?" Lisa sent him the intelligence reports. She watched his expression change as he read them. First confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like anger. He said flatly, "They're going after the." "It looks that way." "They can't fight back. They don't even have a military." "No, they don't." Was silent for a moment. Then he asked the question Lisa had been waiting for. "Why are you telling me this? They aren't our allies. We have no treaty with them." Lisa smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Check file 00001 in the Historical Debts database, the very first entry. She watched access the file. She watched his eyes move as he read the ancient words. She watched him learn about the starward horizon, about Elder, about the rescue that had saved 12,000 human lives when humanity was young and weak. When he looked up, his face had changed. The professional detachment was gone, replaced by something harder and more determined. "They saved us," he said, "when no one else would. They asked for nothing in return. They expected nothing. But Captain Hayes made a promise, Admiral. He promised that if they ever needed help, humanity would be there." Nodded slowly. "And you want to know if we're going to keep that promise?" "I want to know if we're still the species that remembers. I want to know if 300 years has made us forget what we owe." The Admiral straightened in his chair. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Counselor, I've commanded human fleets for 20 years. I've fought pirates and slavers and alien warlords, and I've never once forgotten who I am or where I came from. We're humans. We remember everything, and we always pay our debts. Lisa felt a surge of pride. This was what it meant to be human, not the ships or the weapons or the political power. This, the memory, the loyalty, the refusal to forget. Then start making preparations, Admiral. I don't know when they will move, but when they do, I want us ready. Price smiled, and it was the smile of a wolf catching a scent. We'll be ready, Counselor. When the time comes, that we'll learn what it means to have humanity as a friend. The call ended. Lisa looked out her window at the stars and thought about Elder, dead now for centuries. He had believed that gratitude faded with generations. He had believed that promises made in crisis were forgotten in peace. He had been wrong. Humanity remembered. Humanity always remembered. And soon they would discover just how long human memory could be. The ultimatum arrived at dawn on the. It came as a recorded message, broadcast from orbit by a warship the size of a small moon. The words were simple and brutal. Surrender your world. Become a vassal state of the Dominion. Accept our rule, our laws, and our purpose. You have 72 hours to comply. If you refuse, you will be destroyed. Keeper stood in the great archive of her people and listened to the message play again and again. Around her, others moved in shocked silence, their shimmering skin pale with fear. They had known this day might come. The galaxy was not kind to peaceful species, but knowing something and facing it were very different things. Was young by standards, barely 200 years old. She had spent her life studying history, learning the stories of her ancestors, preserving the memory of everything that had ever been. Now she wondered if there would be anyone left to remember. Her people had no weapons, they had no warships, they had no allies powerful enough to stand against the Dominion. The Galactic Council would express concern and do nothing. That was how galactic politics worked. The strong took what they wanted, and the weak accepted what they were given. But could not accept. She was a keeper of memory, and memory told her that surrender meant death. They did not want partners. They wanted slaves, and species that became slaves rarely survived for long. She began searching the archives, looking for anything that might offer hope. Old treaties, forgotten alliances, any connection to a power that might be willing to help. Hour after hour she searched, growing more desperate with each passing moment. Then she found it, a file so old that the storage crystal had begun to degrade, a record from her ancestor, Elder, written nearly 350 years ago. Read the account of a rescue in the Velar Expanse. She read about a dying human ship and the 12,000 lives her ancestor had saved. She read the words of a human captain who had promised that his species would remember. Humans knew little about them. They were a young species, aggressive by some accounts, unpredictable by others. They had grown powerful in recent centuries, but they kept to themselves and rarely involved themselves in the affairs of others. She wondered if they even still existed. 300 years was a long time. Species rose and fell. Empires crumbled. Promises made in gratitude were forgotten. But what other hope did she have? Composed a message. She did not know if anyone would receive it or care if they did, but she had to try. She told the story of her ancestors' kindness. She told of the danger her people now faced. She asked, with the desperation of one who expects nothing, if humanity remembered. The message flew across the stars, carried by the fastest communication relays the possessed. Watched it go and felt the weight of her people's future pressing down upon her. 72 hours. That was all they had. Far across the galaxy, alarms began to sound. Director Murray was eating dinner when his communicator screamed at him. He answered it and felt his blood run cold as he read the automated alert. They were under threat. The Dominion was making its move. He dropped his fork and ran for his office. Within the hour, he had confirmed the reports. Warships were massing at the edge of space. 800 vessels, according to human intelligence. It was the largest fleet the Dominion had assembled in decades. Called Counselor. She answered immediately, as if she had been waiting for this moment. It's happening, he said. They have given the 72 hours to surrender. Lisa's face was calm, but her eyes were hard as stone. Then we have 72 hours to respond. Get me Admiral Price, and get me the full file on the rescue, every detail. Already done, Counselor. While Lisa made calls to the highest levels of human government, received another notification. A message had been intercepted from space. He read it and felt his heart tighten in his chest. It was from a named keeper. She was asking if humanity remembered. Forwarded the message to Counselor with a single note attached. They're asking for help. Across human space, things began to move. Quietly at first, then with increasing speed and purpose. Admiral Price received his orders while his fleet was conducting exercises near the system. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he called his captains together. We're being redeployed, he told them. All of us. The 3rd Fleet, the 5th Fleet, and the 7th Fleet were going to space. His officers exchanged confused looks. One of them, a young captain named Grace, spoke up. Sir, with respect, they are not our allies. We have no treaty with them. Why are we risking war with a species most of us have never heard of? Pulled up a file on the conference room display. It was the record of the Starboard Horizon rescue, complete with Captain Daniel Hayes's original report. 347 years ago, said, humanity was nothing. We were new to the stars, weak and vulnerable. Our ship was dying and 12,000 people were going to die with it. No one came to help. No one cared. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the room. Except they came when no one else would. They saved our people and asked for nothing in return. They told us that kindness requires no ledger. The officers were silent, their eyes fixed on the old words glowing on the display. But we made a ledger anyway, continued. We remembered. We have always remembered. And now they are the ones dying in the dark, and they're asking if we still care. He looked around the room at the men and women who served under him. He saw understanding dawn in their eyes. He saw the pride of their species take hold. So let me ask you, Captain, what kind of species are we? The kind that forgets, the kind that abandons those who showed us mercy, or the kind that remembers no matter how long it takes? Grace straightened in her chair. We remember, sir. Damn right we do, turned to his navigation officer. Set a course for space, maximum speed, and tell the 5th and 7th to do the same. Across the void, ships began to move. Over 1,000 human warships turned their prows toward a distant system where a peaceful people waited for death. They did not know what was coming. The Galactic Council did not know what was coming. Even they, huddled on their beautiful world, did not know what was coming. But humanity knew. Humanity always knew. A debt was about to be repaid. Warlord stood on the command bridge of his flagship and smiled at the sight before him. 800 warships of the Dominion hung in perfect formation at the edge of space. It was the most powerful invasion force his species had assembled in living memory. And it was entirely unnecessary. They had no military. They had no weapons worth mentioning. Their world was rich with resources and their people were skilled workers. They would make excellent slaves once the initial resistance was crushed. Expected the resistance to last perhaps 3 hours. The 72-hour deadline was almost up. Soon his fleet would advance. The cities would burn. Their people would learn the meaning of submission, and the Dominion would add another jewel to its crown. It was almost boring, really. Had hoped for a challenge. Instead, he was crushing insects. His sensor officer suddenly stiffened at his station. Warlord, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple contacts approaching fast. Waved a dismissive hand. Probably merchant ships fleeing the area. Track them but don't engage. We have bigger prey. Warlord, the officer's voice cracked. These are not merchant ships. The first human vessels dropped out of hyperspace like wolves emerging from shadow. They were big, bigger than had expected. Dreadnoughts and battleships and heavy cruisers, their hulls bristling with weapons. "Count them," ordered, his smile fading. 50 contacts. No, wait, 100, 200. The officer's voice rose with panic. "Warlord, more signatures incoming, many more." The space before them filled with ships. Wave after wave of human warships emerged from hyperspace, their running lights blazing like angry stars. They did not slow. They did not hesitate. They simply appeared, one after another, until the darkness itself seemed to be made of metal and fire. When the last ship arrived, the sensors counted 1,047 human vessels. They outnumbered the Dominion fleet by nearly 200 ships, and these were not weak patrol craft or outdated reserves. These were the finest ships humanity possessed, crewed by veterans, armed with weapons that could crack moons. They positioned themselves in a single, unbroken line between thee and the. Gripped the arms of his command chair until his claws drew blood from his own palms. "What is this? Why are humans here? They have no treaty with the." His diplomatic officer shook his head helplessly. "I don't know, Warlord. There is no record of any agreement between humanity and the. No trade, no alliance, nothing." "Then what do they want?" Before anyone could answer, a communication came through. Not a private channel to the flagship, but a broadcast on all frequencies. Everyone in the system could hear it. Every monitoring station in the galaxy would pick it up within hours. The face that appeared on screen belonged to a human male with gray hair and hard eyes. His uniform marked him as a high-ranking officer. "I am Admiral Price of the United Human Confederacy," the human said. "I address this message to the Dominion and to anyone else who might be listening." Leaned forward, his blood boiling. "Human, you have no right to interfere here. They are not under your protection. Stand aside or face the consequences." The human did not flinch. He did not even blink. He simply continued speaking, as if threats were beneath his notice. 347 years ago, when humanity was weak and dying in the void, they showed us mercy. They saved 12,000 human lives. They asked for nothing in return. They told us that kindness requires no ledger. Felt something cold creep down his spine. He did not understand what this human was talking about, but the calm certainty in the alien's voice frightened him more than any weapon. "But humanity keeps its own ledger," the Admiral continued. "We remember every kindness and every cruelty. We remember every friend and every enemy. We remember debts that other species have forgotten for centuries. That is who we are. That is what we are." The human leaned closer to the screen, and his eyes seemed to burn. "So hear me now, Warlord. They are under our protection. If you want them, you go through us. And I promise you, with every life on my ships as witness, you will not enjoy the experience." The transmission ended. The bridge fell silent. Stared at the wall of human ships blocking his path. He had planned for many scenarios. He had not planned for this. The humans were supposed to be predictable. They were supposed to follow the rules of galactic politics, weighing costs against benefits, avoiding conflicts that did not serve their interests. This did not serve their interests. There was nothing for humanity to gain here. No resources, no territory, no political advantage. They were risking war with the Dominion over a kindness performed before most of their current population was even born. It made no sense, and that was what terrified most of all. An enemy that acted on logic could be understood, could be predicted, could be defeated. But an enemy that acted on something deeper than logic, something woven into their very nature, was an enemy that could not be calculated. Across the galaxy, others watched and came to the same conclusion. The Galactic Council erupted in confusion as news of the standoff spread. Ambassadors from a dozen species demanded explanations. Human diplomats responded with the same calm certainty their admiral had displayed. "We remember," they said. "That is all you need to know." Species that had dismissed humanity as emotional primitives suddenly looked at them with new eyes. If humans would mobilize their entire military over an ancient debt, what else might they do? What other ledgers were they keeping? What kindnesses were being counted, and what cruelties were being marked for repayment? They watched from there, unable to believe what they were seeing. Keeper stood in the central plaza of her city and stared at the sky, where distant lights marked the human fleet. She wept openly, and she was not alone. They had asked if humanity remembered. They had received their answer. Back at the edge of the system, Warlord made his decision. "Recall the fleet," he said quietly. "We are withdrawing." His officers stared at him in shock. "Warlord, if we retreat now, it will be seen as weakness. The Dominion will." "The Dominion will survive to fight another day," interrupted. "These humans are not like other species. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. And I will not send my warriors to die against an enemy I cannot understand." The fleet began to turn. 800 warships, the pride of the Dominion, retreated from a battle they had come to win. They left behind no explanation, no face-saving gesture, nothing but the empty void they had come from. Admiral Price watched them go. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply nodded once and opened a channel to the Keeper, he said. "My name is Price. I bring greetings from humanity, and I believe we have much to discuss." Shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the, carrying Keeper toward a meeting she still could not quite believe was happening. Below her, cities of crystal and living wood spread across the landscape like scattered gems. Above her, human warships hung in orbit like protective angels. Her people were safe. Against all logic, against all reason, they were safe. The shuttle docked with the human flagship and stepped into a corridor that smelled of metal and recycled air. Human officers greeted her with formal nods and guided her through the massive vessel. She saw crew members working at their stations, soldiers standing guard, technicians maintaining complex systems. Everything was efficient and purposeful. Admiral Price waited for her in a conference room overlooking the stars. He was older than she had expected, his hair gray and his face lined with years of command. But his eyes were kind, and when he rose to greet her, his movements held a grace that surprised her. "Keeper," he said, "thank you for coming." Found that her voice was shaking. "Admiral Price, I do not know what to say, what you have done for my people." "We did only what was owed." The Admiral gestured for her to sit. "Your ancestor saved us. We saved you. The debt is paid." "But it has been so long. 300 years. More than 10 generations of my people have lived and died since that day. How could you remember?" Smiled, and there was something ancient in his expression. "We're human, Keeper. Remembering is what we do." He pulled up a display and showed her a document. It was old, so old that the digital preservation marks were visible in the file structure. Read the words and recognized her ancestor's name. Elder, the Wanderer, the being who had stopped to help a dying ship full of strangers. "Your ancestor believed that gratitude fades," said. "He told our captain that promises made in crisis are forgotten in peace. He was wrong." Touched the display, her fingers tracing the ancient characters. He would be amazed to know what came of his kindness. He would be proud. And he should be. What he did shaped our entire species. The Office of Historical Debts was created because of him. We built an institution to make sure we never forgot anyone who helped us, ever. Leaned back in his chair. Other species find it strange. They think we're obsessive, maybe even a little insane, but it's who we are. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed protection agreements and diplomatic relations and all the practical details that came with their new friendship. But beneath the formalities, something deeper passed between them. An understanding. A connection that stretched across 3 centuries. When finally returned to her world, she carried with her a promise. Humanity would protect the not as a conquered people or a vassal state, but as friends. The debt was paid, but the friendship would continue. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. In the halls of the Galactic Council, ambassadors gathered in worried clusters. The implications of what had happened were vast and troubling. Humanity had just demonstrated that they would go to war over an act of kindness performed before their current civilization even existed. What else might they do? What other debts were recorded in their strange archives? Which species had helped humanity in the past and which had harmed them? Counselor Lisa addressed the council with calm authority. She stood before beings from 100 different worlds, and she spoke words that would echo through history. Many of you are confused by what humanity has done. You do not understand why we would risk war over an ancient debt. You think we acted irrationally. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the assembled delegates. You are wrong. We acted according to our deepest principles. Humanity keeps its promises. We remember every kindness and every cruelty. We are not bound by what is logical or profitable. We are bound by what is right. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some delegates looked afraid, others looked thoughtful. A few, very few, looked almost hopeful. We do not seek to conquer or control, Lisa continued. We seek to live in a galaxy where kindness is remembered and cruelty has consequences, where the powerful cannot prey upon the weak without consequence, where debts are paid, one way or another. She let those words hang in the air before delivering her final statement. If that frightens you, perhaps you should consider how you have treated others, because the universe is very old and debts have a way of coming due. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. Species that had wronged humanity in the past began sending diplomatic missions. Apologies were offered. Reparations were discussed. Old wounds were reopened and carefully healed. And species that had shown humanity kindness found unexpected allies appearing at their borders. Trade agreements were proposed. Protection was offered. Humanity reached out to those who had helped them, no matter how small the favor, and said, "We remember." The Dominion retreated to its own space and fell silent. Warlord never spoke publicly about the confrontation but intelligence reports suggested he had become obsessed with understanding humanity. He was said to spend hours studying human history, searching for the logic behind their actions. He would never find it, because there was no logic, not in the way they understood logic. There was only memory and loyalty and a stubborn refusal to let debts fade. Keeper became a hero to her people. She wrote a new entry in the archives, recording everything that had happened. She wrote about the humans who had come from across the stars to stand between her people and destruction. She wrote about the power of kindness and how it could echo across centuries. And at the end, she added her own thoughts. The humans taught us something important today. They showed us that memory is more than history. Memory is a choice. Every species can remember if they choose to, most simply choose to forget. But humanity does not forget. They carry their debts and their gratitudes across the generations, written not just in archives but in their very souls. They have built a civilization on the principle that actions have consequences, even actions taken long ago. My ancestor elder believed that kindness requires no ledger. He was right about that. Kindness should not expect repayment. But humanity taught us another truth. Kindness remembered is kindness. A single act of mercy, preserved across 300 years, became the salvation of an entire species. We owe them everything, and according to their own customs, they will remember that. Perhaps that is not such a bad thing. Perhaps it is time for them to start keeping our own ledger, to remember those who help us and those who harm us, to become, in our own way, more like humanity. The stars once seemed cold and indifferent. Now they seem full of possibility, because somewhere out there humanity is watching, humanity is remembering. And that makes all the difference. Far away in the quiet halls of the Office of Historical Debts on Earth, Director Murray closed the file for the last time. He marked it with a simple notation, "Debt repaid." Then he opened the next file in his queue. There were many more debts to track, many more kindnesses to remember. The work would never truly be done. But that was exactly the point. Humanity never let a debt fade, and that simple fact had rattled the universe to its core.